It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us begin with the headlines. Korea's top court opposed a sweeping law aimed at eliminating corruption despite objections that it overreaches in the private sector. A new foundation by Japan is launched in Seoul to help the victims of Japan's wartime sexual slavery, but some survivors say it's not enough. President Barack Obama endorses Hillary Clinton as the person he trusts to continue what he started. No one, he says, is more qualified for the job. Korea's Constitutional Court upheld an anti-graft law considered controversial by some, and it's slated to take effect in September. The country's main rival parties welcomed the decision, saying the Kim Young-ran law will help make Korea a more clean and transparent society. Kim Young-gil has our top story.
The Constitutional Court has issued its ruling on the so-called Kim Young-ran law, named after the person who proposed it, saying it does not violate the Constitution. The National Assembly passed the tough law, which is aimed at deterring corruption in the public sector, in March of last year. Under the law, it will be legal for civil servants, journalists, and educators hired by private schools to receive individual gifts of goods or services worth more than $887, up to a combined total of $2,655 a year. The law also makes it illegal to accept meals exceeding $27, presents in excess of $44, or receiving more than $89 in money for a wedding or funeral. But controversy arose over the law's inclusion of journalists and private school teachers and their spouses. The conflict was exacerbated by the fact that the lawmakers who passed the act and were supposed to be its targets had excluded themselves. Shortly after the law's passage, the Korean Bar Association, the Journalists Association of Korea, and private school teachers filed a constitutional appeal, claiming that the law puts excessive regulation on the private sector. The court's ruling said, however, the press and private schools would not be able to prevent corruption without being subject to the law. The two main rival parties welcomed the ruling.
The Saenuri Party respects the court's decision. We will make efforts with the opposition bloc to enhance the transparency of the public sector through the Kim Young-ran Act.
The Constitutional Court has shown support for the purpose of legislating this law to make our society more fair and transparent. The ruling has also finally put an end to the ongoing controversies surrounding it.
The minor opposition People's Party and the Justice Party echo the view. But the law is still drawing a backlash from restaurants, retailers, farmers, and many other business owners who claim the law will damage their business. Kim Young-gil, Arirang News.
Pushing for a supplementary budget wasn't the end of governmental efforts to prop up the economy. A day after submitting that bill to the National Assembly, it has rolled out a proposal to revise the country's tax code. Kim Min-ji has more.
Propping up the economy and providing more stability for the public. These are the main pillars of the government's tax code revision proposal.
Korea faces uncertainties at home and abroad, from slowing exports to a contraction in investment to concerns about Brexit. To strengthen the economy and boost job creation, we feel it's time for the active implementation of fiscal measures.
To do so, the government first plans to foster future growth engines by offering up to 30% in tax credits for companies involved in research and development in 11 new growth industries, such as biohealth, robotics, and future cars. To encourage employment, the government looks to offer tax benefits for hiring and investment in all service sectors, including sports services providers and cafes. The revised tax code also proposes tax benefits for troubled companies that voluntarily undergo corporate restructuring. As part of its efforts to give Korean households a boost, the revision seeks an extension of tax deductions for credit card spending until 2019, with the amount deducted changing depending on people's income levels. Tax support is also offered for families that have babies as the country faces a chronically low birth rate. On top of that, the revision aims to improve fair taxation in the system and transparency by increasing capital gains taxes and offering benefits for firms that boost wages and investment. Through these changes, which would take effect next year if approved, the government is expecting to raise the tax revenue by roughly $280 million annually.
In the past few years, Korea has seen a slump in corporate investment, consumption, and exports, and the revision doesn't really include groundbreaking changes that would improve these conditions.
The government's proposal comes about a month after announced a stimulus package to speed up growth. But experts say the impact will be minuscule unless these efforts are coupled with measures to bolster corporate competitiveness and investment. Another concern is a separate bill looking to raise corporate taxes, as opponents say a heavier tax burden on companies could cancel out the expected benefits of the proposed tax revision. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Korea's two leading IT giants, Samsung Electronics and LG, both saw their quarterly operating profits rise in the April to June period. Shin Se-min zooms in on the Korean tech titan's latest report cards.
Samsung Electronics has released its forecast-beating earnings report, which shows its operating profit in the second quarter jumped 18% from the year before to 8.1 trillion won, or $7.17 billion. Sales rose 5% to $45 billion, slightly higher than its earnings guidance, while its net income rose 2% from a year earlier. Considering that Samsung's mobile division accounts for more than half of its revenue and profit, the recent popularity of its Galaxy S7 smartphone and mid to low-end product lineup have played a key part in boosting its standing in the world's already saturated smartphone market. This is in stark contrast to its rival Apple, which reported a 15% drop in quarterly sales due to slowing demand for the iPhone. Given these circumstances, industry watchers believe the tech company will be able to put out yet another handsome earnings report in the latter half of the year. The launch of its Galaxy Note 7, the latest version of its large-screen flagship smartphone set for release next week, is aimed at extending the company's improved performance. On top of that, the prospects for some of its other key divisions look promising as well.
The earnings pickup in the company's consumer electronics division is likely to continue through the end of the year, and the company is expected to maintain solid sales in its display panels and semiconductors.
The country's second-largest electronics maker, LG Electronics, said its second quarter operating profits jumped 13.5% on year, boosted by brisk sales of home appliances and display panels. LG earned $519.6 million in operating profit, making up for the losses generated from the firm's mobile division, which posted operating losses for a fifth straight quarter. Yet, LG is still confident that its third quarter operating profit will be higher than the figure reported a year earlier, as the firm is preparing to launch new businesses that are connected to developing vehicle components that can communicate with external devices. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
A foundation dedicated to the survivors of Japan's wartime sex slavery opened in Seoul on Thursday, funded by the Japanese government. But with the money yet to be transferred and objections from some victims and members of the public, there's still much to iron out. Kwon Jang-ho reports.
The Reconciliation and Healing Foundation was launched on Thursday, funded by Japan, with the aim of compensating Korean women who were forced by the Japanese military to serve on the frontline brothels during World War II. They are euphemistically known as comfort women. Tokyo promised over $9 million to fund the project after a landmark agreement was reached between Korea and Japan last December to try and settle the issue. But according to Japanese media outlets, the two governments are still discussing the details of the arrangement, so the funds will not be transferred until next month at the earliest. One reason for the hold-up was thought to have been a desire on the Japanese side to negotiate the removal of a privately installed statue in front of the Japanese embassy in Seoul, representing the comfort women victims. But the new chair of the foundation, Kim Tae-yeon, has strongly denied this, stressing the funds will only be used in efforts to heal the emotional scars and restore the dignity of the 40 known victims alive in Korea today.
The statue and the $9 million fund have nothing to do with each other, so you can forget about the idea that the money coming or not depends on what happens with the statue.
But not all the surviving victims are happy with the deal. Several of them have rejected the agreement signed last December, saying it does not go far enough.
We have fought for the same thing for the last 25 years. We want an official apology and legal compensation. Money is not the issue. It's about restoring our dignity.
There's also some disapproval among the general public, which was manifested at the foundation's launch. 20 student activists stormed the press conference and held a sit-in protest. Chairperson Kim was also taken to hospital after she was pepper sprayed by a protester while attempting to leave the building. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Malta has become the first European country to effectively deport North Korean workers amid growing concerns about Pyongyang's use of forced labor in Europe. Oh Jung-hee updates us on the growing global efforts to rein in the reclusive state.
According to Maltese government sources who spoke to Yonhap News, some 20 North Koreans working in local construction sites and clothing factories left the country in May after local authorities refused to extend their immigration visas that had expired. The local companies that employ the workers' leisure clothing and rice mix have confirmed the workers are gone. The measure comes amid several reports about the hundreds of North Koreans working as state-sponsored slaves in Europe to earn foreign currency for the communist regime. The South Korean government and human rights groups have claimed that the workers are toiling under long hours and abusive treatment, with 2/3 of their wages taken away by the communist regime. 3 North Korean workers have reportedly disappeared from their workplaces in Malta in the past year, all considered to have defected to South Korea. 2 escaped from a Pyongyang-run restaurant in Malta last year and 1 from a local construction site. Among EU member countries, Malta is considered to have the closest ties to North Korea, with diplomatic relations stretching back to 1971. In related news, Hong Kong's Mingpao newspaper reported on Thursday that an 18-year-old North Korean man who participated in the International Mathematical Olympiad held in Hong Kong recently asked the Korean Consulate General in Hong Kong for political asylum. He is currently under temporary protection. The consulate has not yet issued a comment on the situation. In light of these events, the South Korean government emphasized on Thursday that the international community's joint efforts and combined pressure on the North will continue to change Pyongyang's, quote, wrong strategies regarding issues such as its overseas workers.
Various countries have halted the issuance or extension of visas or employment contracts with North Korean workers. Their illegal stays and their crimes are also under investigation.
The government confirmed that there were cases in Malta of North Koreans defecting last year, but none for this year. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Turning to the United States, the current president of that country shows full support for Hillary Clinton. Our Hwang Ho-jun has the latest from the Democratic National Convention.
She was his rival when he was running for the White House and was later made his Secretary of State. She is Hillary Clinton, and President Barack Obama made an impassioned case for her presidential bid on the 3rd night of the Democratic Party's nominating convention in Philadelphia. Obama's speech garnered a great deal of attention as one of the last major addresses of his presidency. He also had a tough act to follow. His wife brought down the House with a powerful speech of her own on the first day of the convention. To the cheers of thousands of Democratic supporters, Obama endorsed Clinton as a person he trusts to continue what he started.
There has never been a man or a woman, not me, not Bill, nobody, more qualified than Hillary Clinton to serve as President of the United States of America.
Vice President Joe Biden, known as a powerful speaker for the working class, also spoke in support of Clinton's nomination. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine, a relative unknown, got his first primetime introduction to a national audience as he accepted the nomination as Clinton's running mate. Before the big speeches, the night had witnessed some emotional moments as survivors and family members of the victims of 4 different mass shootings took the stage to call for stronger gun laws. One of the most divisive issues in the U.S., gun control, has been one of the tenets of Clinton's campaign. On Tuesday, Clinton became the first woman to represent a major political party in the race for the White House. And just as Ivanka Trump introduced her father at the Republican convention last week, Chelsea Clinton will do the same for her mother, ahead of the nominee's official acceptance speech on Thursday. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Korea's Creative Economy Innovation Centers, launched to support local startups, foster creative ideas, and boost economic growth, celebrate their first anniversary this year. Our Kim Hye-sung takes a look at the center's latest achievements.
6 startups shared their successes at an event for the centers that helped them get off the ground. Korea's Creative Economy and Innovation Centers were launched by the government 1 year ago to foster the burgeoning startup environment in Korea. The Minister of Science, ICT, and Future Planning outlined their successes at a press conference in Seoul on Thursday.
Our centers have provided networks and know-how to startups and SMEs in Korea and expanded our creative economy platforms. We plan to continue our efforts and aim to become one of the top 7 startup nations in the world in a year or two.
As of July this year, the 17 centers around the country have supported over 2,800 Korean startups and SMEs, helping them raise $250 million in funding and created up to 1,400 new jobs. Since opening a year ago, Creative Economy Innovation Centers like this one in Seoul have offered one-on-one consulting services and customized support like funding and networking to help startups turn their ideas into products. Many of the startups have seen their collaborations with the centers come to fruition, including the smartwatch company. It makes smartwatches that can turn text messages into Braille for visually impaired users in real time.
We started in 2014 of June, and we were only college students who had only ideas. So from this center, we got a lot of support, including mentoring. Recently, we could sell our product in 40 different countries, and we have raised $5 million.
In addition to funding, some small and medium-sized enterprises like this one have been able to launch their products through networking.
Through the center, we were able to network and show our ideas to large conglomerates, and we're going to launch our slim-size speaker later this year.
To further boost the momentum, the Future Ministry plans to inject more resources into the innovation centers, which means Korea is likely to see the launch of even more startups in the coming years. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
We've come to the end of this hour's newscast. As always, thank you for watching.